Welcome back, Freelancers Undefeated Rescue, and we're continuing with the Gear Showcase series. Today we're back in the Interceptor, just hanging out on the launch bay, but we'll head out and go over some gear. Okay, so we're continuing with the Assault System, and today we're going over Serpent's Veil. So Serpent's Veil is a primer. It's an upgraded Venom Bomb, trenches target area, or trenches the target area in acid. And then Striker's Venom, Masterwork perk. Melee hits increase all acid damage by 200% for 10 seconds. It does damage about 400, so it's really not going to be that great for DPS. It's got a recharge of 7, which is a little on the high end. Not too bad, though. It's a little bit above average, or where I would like it. The radius is 6, which is actually really nice. And then the acid effect is 60. So any enemy that this hits within that radius should automatically get acid primed. The way to use this, per the Masterwork perks description, it would make a lot more sense to go with the Deathstalker blades, because they are acid inherently on their own, so it'll deal a lot more damage. But we're not going to go that route right now. We're just going to kind of showcase it off on its own. Okay, and then we are in GM1. So the main reason I'm not putting the Deathstalker blades on is because I want to showcase that this is a detonator and it can detonate. So they're both primed instantly, and it's doing tick damage to them, so they should go down. Against shields, not so good, because even though it seems like it's giving tick damage to the shield, or actually it's just the area. Okay, yeah. So that clouded area, you can see like it's doing tick damage in that area. So anything in that area is getting the tick damage. We'll go ahead and just take down their shield real quick. Hit them, and then they are. And I went ahead and detonated them because now I have my acid aura. Now I can just walk up to these enemies and just melt them, burn them away, as long as I have the acid effect on me. I thought there was another one. There is another one here. Oh, here they are. Okay. And I don't know if you notice now, all of a sudden it's like 2,000. That should be attributed to the fact that I've got Venom, Striker's Venom, as one of my stacks, so it's applying to my acid aura. Because before it was like 500 damage or something. Essentially, you'd want to have a lot of. So as you can see too, because I'm using my acid aura, I'm also burning away at their shield. This is kind of one of the ways you can use this. I wouldn't recommend using this way. I do think Deathstalkers is a better way to use this, but this is an interesting way nonetheless. Nope. And then right here is a real fun way to use this. So I detonated them, and I can just, I didn't mean to kill them. I can just run up with all these groups and just burn them all if I can just corner them. Overall, it doesn't do very good damage. It's really just meant for supporting. It's like, to me, a support gear kind of in its own, because it helps you continuously get your acid aura, and then on top of that, it lets you see if we can stay in their shield and burn them. So as you can see, like the armored enemies are getting more damage, or they're getting almost double of what the normal enemies are getting. We'll go ahead and clear out the last of these, and then go up against the ranger. Okay, cool. It's just me and the ranger. Oh. So it's because they're staying in that cloud. It's giving them damage over time, but it only hangs around for about a few seconds or so. Yeah, and it's not on its own. It's not doing great damage against them. Because I've thrown this like 4 times and haven't gotten their shield down yet. Even when they are staying in it, it's really not doing a whole lot. So I'll let them ult, and then I want to take their shield down. Okay. So because of their armor, like we discussed, it does pretty good damage. So I can just, as long as they stay in that area, they should go down. Yep. So this is one of those things that it's going to be really good against armored enemies on its own, and okay against non-armored enemies. But we'll go into GM3 and showcase it off there. Okay, so we are back in GM3, and we are in the Hollow. So this gear is pretty straightforward. There's really nothing too complicated about it. The idea though would be kind of like with all gear, you just want to get them in our group, and then you can get you can get the masterwork perk for proc, and you can detonate that group and get a lot of damage back. There's other ways to use it, and we'll go over that towards the end. But I just want to show in general, like, this is like the intended purpose of it. Here we go. Here's a nice little group. And we can just sit in there, let them burn from the acid, and then burn them from our acid aura. So it's like you're double dipping with the damage, pretty much. So I'm just like, these guys trying to run away, but I need to. I don't have enough damage done to with my aura. Oh, that's here's the issue. Okay, I thought he did not have a shield on him. But yeah, I can pretty much just chase down this enemy, spam the bombs on him, hit him with my acid aura, and just like burn him away. 5,000 to 6,000 damage at a time. Ooh. And then if you wanted to spam your acid around and just do it that way, you could use Shadow Claw to do it as well. So you can go a lot of different ways with this one, and that's what kind of is fun about it. Or well, let's not get into the box checking yet. Nope, I don't have my aura. That's why that's the problem. All right. So I could detonate one of these guys in this group that are under the effects, and then we could just do some more burning. So I'll go ahead and take these enemies out, and then we'll look for some armored enemies. Alright, so we got some armored enemies over here. And it's doing about the same numbers we were seeing before. We can go in here and just chase them down and just do a lot more damage. Oh. Oh, stuck on that block. So overall, pretty good all-around damage. But I'll go ahead and clear the rest of these guys out, and we'll go up against the ranger. Okay, it's just me and the ranger right now. I'll let them do their ult. I'll lose my acid aura. All right, so against their shield, pretty much seeing the exact same numbers, but they're a lot stronger or beefier this time with their armor and resist. Okay. So about 2,000 damage, and then on top of our burning, about another 5,000. So legitimately, I think in GM3 I'm going to be able to take them down with just this. Oh. Fortunately, they're not priming at the moment, but yeah. And it's just because of the way the priming system works. You can't just constantly prime them over and over with the same element type. That's why certain elements like, or certain gear pieces like Steam Vent are very powerful. We'll just go ahead and take them out. Ooh, nice, got me right as they went down. Okay, so we'll talk about the gear real quickly. So let's go over some efficient, or well, let's compare it to its gear, and then we'll go over the box checking. So in the assault system, it's a primer. So what it compares to is Tesla Trap. What's the other one I thought? Oh, an Absolute Zero. So Tesla Trap, in my opinion, is well, we haven't gone over that one, but I kind of feel like it falls in the same kind of rating and category that Bitter Harvest did, but it can prime targets too. That's it. It just does one better thing than this, which was, in my opinion, one of the worst gear pieces potentially in the game. Potentially, at least for the Interceptor. So comparing it to Absolute Zero, it does Absolute Zero does better damage, and then it freezes the target, and it does several different types of damage at once, because I think it throws out 2 glaives, and then both those glaives, when they hit on impact, they do ice explosions on their own. So it's like 4 types of damage. So essentially, you're seeing this number 4 times. Where this has tick damage, right? So when you hit this enemy, it'll keep giving tick damage over the time that it remains, which is approximately like 4 to 5 seconds. So you could do this damage 4 to 5 times. This still does more damage in general if we're going off that. The recharge, though, for Absolute Zero is like very punishing. It's like 20, whereas with the recharge over here, it's about 7. So I'm able to spam this more and more and more and get more groups, and then I can use it more often. So that means I can get my acid aura by detonating combos more often. So this is going to be a lot more consistent than this. This is going to be like your initial upfront damage, and then kind of waiting for it to come back. With here, you're going to be able to damage a lot more enemies a lot more often and just create clouds everywhere. And then the effects, even though ice effect over here is like 100, if you got over 20 with anything, you're going to prime an enemy unless they are resistant. So if anything, these really kind of cancel each other out because they're both over 20. But this one does have a greater ice effect, just for transparency. Here, though, is where I think that Serpent's Veil is better than Absolute Zero, is that its Masterwork perk, Striker's Venom, increases pretty much all acid damage by 200%. Well, melee hits increase all acid damage by 200% for 10 seconds. So basically, I can increase the bomb by 200%. So that would still put it at what, 2, 4, or so 4, 8, 9, 10, put it at about 12. So it's still technically under this with melee hits, technically, but you wouldn't want to use it that way. You'd want to put on Serpent's Veil to really get the most out of it. Sorry. This is Serpent's Veil. You'd want to put on Deathstalker Blades to get the most out of it. It kind of depends on what you want. I personally think that this one's better than that one. So I feel like out of all the primers in here, Serpent's Veil is the better one. Plus, it's just setting up a lot of different targets for priming for your enemy or for your team as well, against the enemies. So it has a lot more synergy, I believe, all around than Absolute Zero does. So we'll go over some box checking, though. Is it efficient? Wrong one. So here's the cool thing about it, that it's got a really big dome, right? So it's got a big radius. And then if you come in here, you can see it hangs around for a second. This cloud is what is doing that damage. So you can see it's just now dissipating. So it's about 3 or 4 seconds that it hangs out for. So it has that like after effect where it hangs around for a little while too. It seems like this one hung around. Anyways, and then it has a very low recharge. I only had 2 when I was coming in here, but as you can see, you can kind of just like spam them down and create cloud after cloud after cloud. So it works kind of like Tesla Trap or Bitter Harvest, where if you have enough charges, you can just throw them down and create clouds upon clouds upon clouds and just make this whole area a Venom Cloud area, which is kind of nice. Let's see here, and then yeah, so it's actually very efficient, because so you're hitting a group of enemies or even an enemy, it's doing damage over time on its own. It's giving so because it hangs around, it's doing that damage over time. It's priming those enemies, so it's doing a lot of things at once just by throwing it. Just by throwing it, it's already created like 3 effects. Its initial effect, its damage over time effect, and it's priming the enemy with acid. So yeah, that's a lot to do with just one press of a button. Granted, it's not a lot of damage, but that's kind of like the trade-off, I guess. And then if you come in here and detonate that combo with melee, now you got Striker's Venom. Where basically you're on melee hits, it increases acid damage by 200%. So if you've got a full-on acid build, this build could be ridiculous. And that's where like I've drawn comparisons before with what was it, Ruthless Stalker? Yeah, Ruthless Stalker. So Ruthless Stalker was kind of the one I compared last time, and I made a specific build for it because I was like, it's so hard to use this often to get that melee damage. Where with this, it wouldn't be that hard. this is an easier version of the build I had for Ruthless Stalker, because you just throw it out and you create acid in the area and then you just roll with it as a melee build. So I think it's better than Ruthless Stalker in that point, but Ruthless Stalker still has its place. So I think it does better than that. So efficiency wise, I think it works very well. So I think it's very efficient. And then for what was it? Viability. So I've only ever called like 1 or 2 items that could prime or detonate not viable because they had other issues with them that are really hard to use. This is not one of those. This one is extremely viable just because you can prime multiple targets and just continuously throw this out. If you have a lot of good charges on, you just throw it everywhere and just surround clouds and just go through detonating all the enemies however you want to detonate them. And then because you'll be primed, you can spread it out with something else, and it could get nutty really fast. So it's one of those more interesting pieces of gear that I actually enjoy. So it's definitely viable. And then is it fun? Well, like I was just talking about, like I have fun with it, man. You kind of just throw it from wherever, detonate some targets depending on what your build is, and then spread it some more. Or you can just have a complete melee build where you're just priming with acid constantly, using acid on everything and just taking them out. So and it's not complicated, right? You just throw it and it does those 3 things we were originally talking about on its own. So it's not really hard to use. So I'm going to call it fun. And that's kind of going to lead me into giving it the thumbs up. I think this is a good piece of gear. I think you definitely need to have it in your inventory, and there's a lot of builds that have synergy with it. So I'm going to recommend trying to get one. I recommend getting one with more charges than anything, but you know, it depends on what you want to do with your build. It doesn't have a lot of damage, and that's why I think getting damage rolls on is going to be kind of pointless anyways, because you're not really doing it for the actual damage, you're doing it for the acid damage that it does over time. So the initial damage is nice, but what you want to do with it is have it so that it does damage over time with acid. So you want to put a lot more inscriptions and rolls into your acid effect or your acid damage in general. So that's why I would say I wouldn't worry about getting too much damage on this gear. I would worry more about getting more rolls of charges, so you can just throw them out more often and use them more. Because then, you know, it's just going to create that whole wall of everything, just killing the enemies on its own. But I don't think there's too much else to say on it. I gave it a thumbs up, and I think I'm gonna end the video here. So I'm Defeated Rescue, and I hope to see you guys out in Bastion.